Welcome back, everyone. We are looking at the subtopic of symbiosis within different interactions in the environment. And so far, we've learned about thumbs up, thumbs up. What was that? Of course, mutualism. Thumbs up, thumbs down, one harmed, one benefits. That is parasitism. We're now going to move on to a third category of symbiosis, and that is commensalism. Now, in commensalism, we're going to see one organism benefits. So we've got one thumbs up. Now, the other organism is not harmed, but it doesn't benefit either. It's kind of, whatever. It doesn't hurt me, doesn't benefit me, but you know what? Just let it carry on. So in commensalism, one organism is benefiting, but it's not harming the other organism in any way. It's also not benefiting them, but it means that this symbiotic relationship can just benefit one of the organisms in this relationship. Let's look at some examples. All right, so we have a look at the photograph there of buffaloes and egrets. Now, I don't want you to confuse those white birds with tick birds. They are egrets. In fact, they eat larger insects than little ticks, like grasshoppers, locusts, that kind of insect that would be found in the grass. And you know what? Those insects are well camouflaged. They hide away perfectly. It really helps if you have a buddy system going, where there's this enormous buffalo that's going to be walking through the grass, and as it walks through the grass, it disturbs the insects. And all the egrets have to do is follow the buffalo and pick off the insects as they fly up into the air. It's a nice relationship. Who's it thumbs up for? Clearly, it's thumbs up for the egrets. They are benefiting from this relationship. All they have to do is hang around large herbivores. So you'll see them in relationships with buffalo, elephants, even other herds that are not quite as big in terms of the size of the animal, but are big in terms of the size of the herd. So big herds of zebra or wildebeest will also be followed by the egrets. Thumbs up for the egrets. They are following these other animals that are disturbing the insects and allowing the insects to fly up into the air, and the egrets can pick off the insects. What about the buffalo? Quite frankly, the buffalo, look at its facial expression. That buffalo doesn't care. It's not helping the buffalo. It's also not harming the buffalo. So we've got the situation where one organism, the egret, is thumbs up. The other organism is, whatever. I'm not harmed. I'm not benefited. That is commensalism. Let's look at another example of commensalism. All right, on this whale, you might see these little bumps. Now, those bumps are not part of the whale. Those little bumps are, in fact, another organism called a barnacle. And barnacles are a kind of crustacean. So you're probably thinking crabs. Yes, but crabs scuttle around. Barnacles are sedentary. They are fixed to a particular spot. So a barnacle has a little shell-like structure that's almost like a little volcano, and the barnacle itself sends out little legs, feelers, and very importantly, filter feeding appendages. And the barnacle sits on its rock and it sticks out its little feeding appendages and it filter feeds food from the water. But you know what? If it was filter feeding in one position, it's pretty limited in terms of the amount and variety of food that it could get. Imagine if the barnacle could be attached to another organism that is swimming through the water. So now the barnacle doesn't have to wait for the tide to bring in new organisms. The barnacle is the king. It's got a whale throne, and it is cruising through the water attached to the whale, and its little feeding appendages are out there filtering the water for any food. Barnacles are often also found attached to turtle shells. So as the turtle is swimming, the barnacle is kind of catching a bit of a joyride in terms of being able to filter all this food out of the water. So in terms of thumbs up, thumbs down, what's happening here? Well, the barnacle is clearly benefiting. The barnacle says, yeah, food. The whale is, what? Something on my back, did you say? Sorry, didn't hear you. The barnacle is the one that benefits. The whale isn't harmed, and it certainly isn't benefited from this tiny little barnacle on its back. So here we've got another example of commensalism. We've worked our way through 3 different kinds of interactions, symbiotic interactions, and this little poster summarizes it very nicely. Instead of thumbs up, thumbs down, it's got smiley faces. So, mutualism, the flower gets pollinated, the bee gets nectar. The way we were learning about it, thumbs up, or smiley faces all around. What about commensalism? Smiley face for the barnacle, the whale, whatever, I'm not harmed, I'm not benefited. Parasitism, smiley face for the tick, and sad face for the cat, because the cat is getting an infection or an irritation, because sometimes the ticks have other parasites inside their salivary glands, and so this poor cat could even get tick bite fever from having this parasite attached to it. So I'd like you to summarize this section on symbiosis with thumbs ups and thumbs downs and whatever, and that'll help you understand the nature of the particular symbiotic relationship that you might be asked to describe. So talking about being asked to describe, are you up for some questions? Let's practice some typical assessment tasks relating to interactions in the environment. All right, let's start with this one. How can farmers exploit predator-prey relationships? Now remember, we spoke about predator-prey relationships such as the lynx and the snowshoe hare. How could a farmer exploit this natural kind of relationship that might be going on in the farming ecosystem? Well, here is a ladybird beetle. And the most favorite thing a ladybird beetle likes to eat is a kind of bug called an aphid. Now, ladybird beetles don't harm other plant varieties. Clearly, they're carnivorous. But aphids harm plant varieties. They stick a long proboscis into the phloem, or the food transporting tissue of the plant, and they suck out the food, which means that they are decreasing the plant's energy sources and decreasing the efficiency of the plant to produce food, to grow bigger. And that's what the farm is all about, healthy food, not a space for aphids to grow. Aphids can also, like malaria mosquitoes, they can carry parasites as well. So it's not a good thing for a farmer to have crops infested with aphids. But it could be a good thing if the farmer introduced the natural predator of the aphid. And so we find that the farmer can exploit or use to his or her benefit the predator-prey relationship between ladybird beetles and aphid bugs. And these farmers' best friends can help control the agricultural pests, which means that the farmer doesn't have to use pesticides or artificial chemicals to kill the aphids. And we all know about the problems associated with chemical warfare in terms of farming and growing plants. So exploiting a natural predator-prey relationship, we can say thumbs up to the farmers, can't we? What about another question? Identify each kind of symbiotic relationship. So we've got to say what the relationship is and is there harm or benefit. So here we have a little tick bird. It's actually called an oxpecker. And here we have an impala. Here we have a shark. And this is called a remora fish. And here we have a caterpillar, which is the larval stage of a butterfly or a moth. And here we have some eggs. Let's look at this picture and what we have to do. What kind of relationship is going on here and who's being harmed and who's benefiting? Well, clearly our oxpecker is benefiting. Thumbs up to the oxpecker. Thumbs up to the impala as well, because that little oxpecker is taking ticks off, external parasites like ticks off the impala. The impala benefits because it's getting rid of these parasites, and the oxpecker is benefiting because its tummy is getting full and it's getting food. So this one is mutualism. What about the shark and the remora fish? This is another instance of barnacles and whales. The remora fish swims along with the shark. It's so tiny, it's not going to harm the shark. It's also not going to benefit the shark in any way. So for the shark, it's whatever. But for the remora fish, it's going to catch little pieces of food because, let's face it, sharks don't have good eating habits. They rip their prey apart and there's all little pieces of food floating around in the water that the remora fish can in fact grab and eat. So we're looking at commensalism. This is the sad story of the parasitized caterpillar. We've got a caterpillar that a wasp has actually, the cheek of it, laid her eggs inside the living caterpillar. And when the eggs are going to hatch, the eggs are going to benefit. Those little baby wasps are going to benefit because they've got a food source right there. And the poor caterpillar is going to have literally its inside sucked out. All right, some kind of horror story going on here called parasitism. What interaction is being shown here? Well, here we've got different kinds of birds, and we can see that some birds have long necks and long legs. Some can dive. Some are going to be feeding on the shore. Some right up here on the sand. And what we've got going on here is niche partitioning. We've got 5 different species of water birds that can survive in the same habitat by specializing in terms of their food habits. What kind of competition is illustrated and what resource is being competed for? Lion, hyena, therefore 2 different species. We are looking at interspecific competition for food. Here we're looking at the same species, ibex, fighting with each other either over territory or mates. different species, the zebra and the gemsbok. Here we go, they are in competition over water. And here we've got the same chicks in competition with each other, same species, for food. I've put together a little summary for you that goes through the main kinds of interactions that we have discussed in our lesson. And we've looked at lots of new terminology that must land up inside your glossary. But that's it for this lesson. Please join me again next time, and we're going to be looking at human populations. But for today, goodbye.